this is Marlene with Miami Ghost Chronicles, and I want to welcome you to another episode of Stories of the Supernatural. Wherever you find us, whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to miamighostchronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on Substack. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. Hi, everybody. Everybody doing good? I'm doing good. Everything is... It's here. We're marching right along through the summer here in northern Florida. Okay, and I'm going to do a quick interjection because I know everybody asks, okay, Marlene, you always talk about your chickens at the beginning of the show. I'm very happy because I got two guineas, two little guinea hens. You know, I put the eggs under a regular chicken. It's a long story, everybody that knows. And I got two chicks. But what I did was I was like, I can't keep bringing the chickens into the paranormal show. It's like, hello. So I set up a TikTok channel just for the chickens. I'm going to put a link in the credits of the show. Okay, and then it's just much easier to do clips off my phone when I'm out there working with them versus trying to show them on here. So in the future, unless something spectacular happens in chicken world on my farm, you'll probably be better able to follow what happens with that part of my life over on the TikTok channel. So, and let's see how that goes. That's another, that's a whole nother mindset as far as, for people. It's brief is the word for it, I guess. And also I wanted to remind you, I know I just said it, don't forget, Substack, I got the newsletter, comes out about 2-3 times a week, and of course you can go to miamighostchronicles.com for links to everything, everywhere, podcast platforms, you name it, that's where you're going to find links to anything, including if you need to email me for anything. I said before, I'm already working on season 13 of Stories of the Supernatural. Okay, Stories of the Supernatural, season 13, folks, 13. It runs from January to July of 2023. Okay, so if you know of anybody or anything, send them over my way. As far as, like I said, I'm open to, it doesn't have to be anybody that's an expert. Anybody that's had unusual stories, just tell them to send me an email. All right. So that's in the works. And also, like I said, I am going to have the live stream for Halloween. I know a lot of people are saying, Marlene, Halloween is October. We're in August. I don't know where you're at, but I've walked into a couple of stores like in the last 2 weeks, and they've dragged out a bunch of stuff out of Halloween that I was like, come on, guys, isn't this a little bit premature? But, considering that I love Halloween, I don't mind. But at the same time, maybe that's why I got it Halloween on the brain. So yeah, I'm going to be doing a live stream for Halloween, the Halloween night, which, let me see, hopefully will not fall on a weekend because I know everybody is going to party. Okay, the 31st is a Monday. Wonderful. Okay, so everybody that's recovering from the weekend, Halloween weekend, where maybe they partied or whatever, you can come over and join me for the live stream, and I will give you updates on that. And also, I know everybody asked me how's the last book that I'm working on. I'm shooting for release in October, but I'm not sure yet because, when you're juggling too many balls in the air, yeah, that's what happens. And if you get carried away before you know it, you're doing a horrible job on everything. And but yeah, I'll let you guys know. I'll give you more up-to-date information on that as I get closer and a more definite release date. And because believe it or not, there's something very time consuming having to do with it, which is the editing part. Editing takes a long time. So anyway, guys, let's get on to the good part. The good part is who is here tonight as a guest. This is the first time this gentleman has been on Stories of the Supernatural. Well, Micah, let me ask you something. Let me bring you on. Hold on a minute. Here we go. Okay, there we go. Micah, as far as, because we were talking about the what you do as far as your podcast series and everything like that. And do me a favor, go ahead and give us a short bio. Give me the elevator version of a bio about you.
So I've been studying the Bible for 30 years. I've been
Okay.
studying the occult and esoteric for about 20. I've been studying something called astrotheology for about
Okay.
10, and I've been teaching it for about 2.25 years now. And I've just
Okay.
been doing podcasts, just teaching people this ancient science that basically encases the Bible.
Okay. Now, was this something that you grew up in as far as childhood, or did you have an experience? Did you
No,
become
not at
interested in
all.
this?
About 10 years, I'm from Long Island, and about 10 years
Okay.
ago, I moved to Boston
Okay.
for a job. While I was there, the iPad had just come out, so I'd be on the iPad going down rabbit holes, and I discovered this thing called astrotheology, and I fell in love with it, and I started studying it, and then eventually, after
Mm-hmm.
about a good year of just
Okay.
studying it hours and hours and hours a day, I
Mm-hmm.
started doing it on my own. And I basically put together a presentation that I've done over 400 times in the last 2 years.
Okay. And because the thing is this, you're also, besides, it sounds like almost, I want to say, for lack of a better word, um your research, you basically, this interest has driven your research as far as your knowledge is what I'm saying. All
Right.
right. What when Let me ask you, and the reason I'm asking this is sometimes when people research a certain subject, either it becomes more interested or they become disappointed. In other words, they run across information that either they say I'm on the right track or this is more than I thought, or they're like kind of let down because this is not what I originally thought.
Right.
What happened to you when you were doing all this research all this time as far as this field?
It was endless. It goes so deep. Honestly,
Okay.
it's the oldest and the deepest story that there is out there. It goes back to the Sumerians,
Okay.
and it's unbelievable.
So when you, and I guess my question is the following, because sometimes a lot of this information, when you go back further, as far as research, when you start going into older versions, sometimes I'm sure you're aware that certain versions were put out. Did you ever come across information or something that you're saying, that there were opposing versions?
I mean, yes and no. It doesn't really affect my research. It doesn't really affect my
Okay.
work. If one word changes, in
Mm-hmm.
the Hebrew Old Testament, the Ten Commandments says, "Thou shalt not murder."
Right.
In the New King James Bible, it says, "Thou shalt not kill." There's a very big difference between kill and murder, but it doesn't affect what I'm talking about.
Okay. So basically, it wasn't anything that you came across as like, this is two totally different interpretations of whatever the case might be.
Right.
Okay. So then you went on and you're an author. You have, and as I was telling you before we started recording, what happened? You incorporated all this information that you had
Correct.
taken, and you
Correct.
basically
I
put it into a story, a fictional story, but
I
there's a layer
did.
of truth.
The whole thing is truth.
Right.
The
Okay.
story is fiction, but all the information I talk about is truth.
Okay. So in other words, you just had took the fictional character and inserted him
Right.
into. So do you think that any of this information that you researched, is it not public knowledge because it's been hidden, or is it
Correct.
just so that, okay, you know where I'm going with that? Because this is, one of the things here, because I know that there's a comparison here from your books as to something like, with Dan Brown and the Da Vinci Code and things
Right.
of this nature, which of course, if you look at that type of book, basically it's, the protagonist is come across information that only he, because he deals in this type of things, but the general public has totally have no idea.
Right. It's very similar to that.
Okay. Okay. And and I why do you think, let me ask you, just, and I know this is, it could be a very deep question versus a very general question. Why do you think that the majority or the bulk of this information has been obscured from future generations, depending on when it was, basically?
Um, so the reason it was hidden from everybody
Mm-hmm.
is because they don't want you to know what the truth is.
Okay.
Um, that's basically what it is. And I have a presentation that I'm going to do about half of, where I'm
Okay.
going to show you what I'm talking about.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Because I was going to tell you the truth. That's like, it sounds like there's multi-layered truths to what you've researched, versus the truth. I mean, it sounds like you were doing this for years.
Right.
And I don't know if for you it was something where, like a jigsaw puzzle, you get this one part and then you get something else and then you realize, hey, these things are not really separate. It's part of the same story. And
Right.
then, maybe it leads you in another direction. So what do you want to do? Do you want to talk more about this? Do you want me to bring up the presentation? Do you want to
Yeah,
describe
you
maybe
can bring
the,
up the presentation
okay,
and we'll go through it.
okay, here we go. Hold on. Hey, there we go. Let's
Hold
get the
on.
presentation.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. That's better. Okay, so here we are. Go ahead.
You want me to just start and go?
Yeah, go. Go for it.
All right. So I start by saying, employ your time in improving yourself by other men's writings, so that you shall come easily by what others have labored hard for. And that's what it is. I've put about 60 years worth of combined studying into this presentation. And I'm just trying to get this information out there to people. And it's not what a lot of people are going to think. Now, when you talk about the Bible, okay, you have to understand is it's not what it seems, okay, at all. Okay, it's something so completely different than you think it is. Okay, the scriptures are known as the seven sciences. It's metaphysical, astrological, which is what we're going to go into, anatomical, alchemical, spiritual, esoteric, and mythology. The Bible is not literal, it is not historical, it is not reality, and it is not original. Okay,
Whoa! I'm just kidding, but you know that right there, that when you just, that one thing, that's very controversial.
yes, it is, but I can make a good case for it.
Oh, no, no, I'm not, I don't doubt it, but because there's a lot of people that, those four things that you say they're not, those four bullet points, a lot of people think that it's exactly that.
I
So,
understand, but I'm going to show you how it's not.
all right, go ahead.
So what we're talking about is this. We're talking about the zodiac.
Mm-hmm.
Astrotheology is the mythology with the zodiac. Okay? Now, with
Mm-hmm.
Capricorn at the bottom and Cancer on top, this is how the zodiac wheel should look.
Okay.
And there's stories in each, okay, which play out. Now, astrology or astrotheology goes back to the Lascaux Caves, which goes back 17,000 to 40,000 years. Okay, here you see the Lascaux cave paintings are 17,000 years ago on the left. World's oldest cave paintings show humans understood complex astronomy 40,000 years ago. That's on the right. This goes back to the Lascaux caves. Now, the Lascaux caves are these caves in Lascaux, France. That's why it's
Mm-hmm.
called the Lascaux Caves, because it's in Lascaux, France. Okay? There were some teenagers about 50, 60 years ago that went, not 50, 60 years ago, there's some teenagers that went in there recently. And when they went to the back of the wall, they saw something like this.
Right.
Okay? Now, on the top left, you see the bull. On the right, you see the lion. And on the bottom, you see the horse. Okay? Now, they quickly figured out that the bull was Taurus, the lion was Leo, and the horse was Sagittarius. It's just missing the guy with the bow and the arrow. So what they did was they carbon dated the wall.
Okay.
And the carbon dating came out to 17,000 years old. Okay?
Wow.
And what they did was when they figured that out, they brought in an astrologer and an astronomer with a computer, because we have the technology to do what I'm about to tell you they did. What they
Okay.
did was they rewound the sky back 17,000 years.
All right.
Okay? And they printed out the stars that they saw on their computer program. And what they did was they superimposed it on the wall, and all the constellations lined up to where they were.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So there's questions you can ask in the Bible. But Jesus was able to heal the blind, how he walked on water, how he turned water into wine, why he had 12 disciples, why he was betrayed with a kiss by Judas, why he was dead for 3 days, why is his birthday on December 25th. All of that is astrology, and I'm going to show you that. Genesis 1:14 says, "Let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be signs to mark the seasons, days, and years." And that's basically what it is. It's a giant sky clock.
Okay.
Now, each zodiac sign is called a house, or an era, an eon, a sign. There are many words for it. So what you have to do in order to understand how to decode the Bible with astrology, I have to teach you the 12 signs. And I'm going to teach you key words in each sign that relate to each sign. Okay? So we're going to start with Aquarius, which is the one I talk about, which is represented by the man with the water pitcher. So it's technically Aries begins the agricultural year, but I start with Aquarius because that's kind of the beginning of our year.
Right.
Goes back to the story of Zeus and the young boy. So Zeus saw a 14-year-old blonde boy on Earth, and he wanted him in heaven. He really liked him. Okay? And the boy's father wouldn't let him go up. So basically, long story short, Zeus bargained with the father, gave him a whole bunch of things. He took the boy up to heaven. The boy started serving people, or the gods, with this water pitcher, and in it was something called ambrosia, which is the nectar of the gods. And what basically happened was he got fed up of doing it time and time and time again, that what he ended up doing was he went to the side of heaven and he poured it out, just like in this picture, and it caused the flood on Earth. That's where the Greeks get their flood story from. Okay. Now Zeus, in a fit of rage, was going to punish him, but then realizing that he took a young boy up there kind of against his will, instead of punishing him, he immortalized him as the constellation Aquarius. So it's a Greek story. So there's key words. Whenever you hear son of man or man, because this is the sign of the man, baptism, because this is how you baptize someone, water pitcher, because this is a water pitcher, fountain, because a lot of fountains are kind of carved like this, stream, river, pond, lake, ocean, sea, water-related things, that's Aquarius. Pisces is the mutable water sign, too. It's the two fish in the water. So all the previous water examples here apply to Pisces, too. And there's ways to figure out which water they're talking about based on the patterns that it makes in the zodiac. Now, Aries is the ram. And in Aries, you have March 21st, which is the spring equinox. It's a 12-hour day. It's a 12-hour night. It's also the Passover, or the passing over of the sun over the equator on March 21st, and back on its way to its height in the summer solstice. In Christianity, the Passover is changed, and it's called the resurrection of God's Son. Okay, see, Easter and Passover both happen in Aries. The Jewish Passover is when the angel of death passes over all the houses, and anyone doesn't have the lamb or the ram, Aries the ram, anyone doesn't have the ram's blood on their door, their firstborn sons get killed. So whenever you hear ram, lamb, shepherd, or ram's horn, you're talking about Aries.
Okay.
And Taurus is the bull. When you look at the sky and you see Taurus during the season where it's supposed to be, you know that you need to put the plow on the bull so that you can plant the seed so you can harvest in Virgo and Libra. So whenever you hear bull, ox, calf, or cow, cow being the female bull, you're talking about Taurus. Then Gemini is the twins. It's the story of Castor and Pollux Troy, whose sister was Helen of Troy. It's the story of Achilles. So whenever you hear this, and that's another Greek story. So whenever you hear twins or brothers, they're talking about Gemini. Okay, Cancer is the crab, and it's the sideways moving creature. So what the sun does every year is, starting on December 25th, it rises a degree on its axis. The next day, it'll rise an additional degree. The next day, an additional degree. Every day rising a degree. Okay, it continues to do this. The nights get longer. The days get longer. The nights get shorter until it hits June 21st. That's the summer solstice. That's when the sun is at its height. It's the longest day of the year. Then for 3 days, it neither raises nor drops a degree. It walks sideways. Okay, that's why it's the crab. It stays at that height for 3 days. Okay. Then on June 25th, it drops a degree. The next day, it'll drop another degree. Now the nights are getting longer. The days are getting shorter. Okay, when it hits December 21st, that's the winter solstice. And then it walks sideways for 3 days again. And then it crawls back to life December 25th. And the sun does this year in and year out. So whenever, and in the ancient Egyptian time, the crab was also known as the scarab. Okay, so whenever you hear crab or beetle, you're talking about Cancer. Then Leo is the king. He's the lion. He's the king of the jungle. The ruling planet of Leo is actually the sun. So whenever you hear lion, lioness, or cub, you're talking about Leo. And Virgo is the woman holding the wheat stalk. Remember before when we said that you plant in Taurus? Well, the virgins would cultivate the wheat in Virgo in order to make the bread for the year. So whenever you hear virgin, wheat, grain, seed, barley, corn, grainy things, things that you harvest, that always
Hmm.
happens during the harvest, which is in Virgo. And Libra is the justice. It's the scales, it's the balance, it's the just one. The reason it's considered the justice is because it judges God's sun as it passes over the fall equinox and begins its descent into winter, into cold, into death. See, in the spring, March 21st, the Passover, it's being celebrated. Here it's being judged and sentenced to death. Okay? Libra is also wine season, which is when you plant for the grapes in Taurus, you press the wine here. It is also olive oil season. Okay? That's when you press the olives. All that takes place in Libra. So all law-related things, law, judge, justice, the just one, divorce, marriage, court, that's Libra. Wine vineyard, wine press, grapes, juice, that's Libra. Olive oil or olive oil, that's Libra. Incidentally, frankincense and myrrh are both olive plants as well. So when you get to the New Testament and they're talking about that, they're
Hmm.
referencing Libra.
And
Scorpio
it's the only inanimate object also in the zodiac. As far as Libra is concerned, I'm just saying. Go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. Scorpio is the scorpion. He is the betrayer. When a scorpion bites you, it leaves an imprint in your skin that looks like a pair of lips. It's why the mafia has the kiss of death. And it's why Jesus was betrayed by Judas with a kiss. Okay. Judas represents Scorpio. Okay. Each one of the 12 disciples represents one of the 12 zodiac
Wait,
signs.
okay. This is super interesting. Wait, I'm like, okay. So, I mean, so basically you're saying the scorpion, he's a betrayer, and you said when he bites you, it leaves the imprint in your skin that looks like two lips.
Correct.
All right. Now, in other words, the kiss is symbolic of betrayal, is what you're saying,
That's
right?
right. That's right. Because it's a kiss, which is a symbol of
Okay.
love, but it's full of poison. So it's a
Right.
betrayal.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
That's why Jesus was betrayed by Judas with a kiss. So the sun is judged in Libra. Remember the
Okay.
judge? And
Uh-huh.
it's betrayed in Scorpio. Finally, in Sagittarius, this is where the bow and the arrow shoot the sun and inflict further punishment on the sun. This is where the sun dies. Why? Because on December 25th, the sun is at its lowest point. It cannot rise any lower. It was considered
Okay.
dead. The ancients would look out and see the sun didn't even crack the horizon. So they would say
Right.
the sun was dead. And it remains at that lowest level for 3 days. It walks sideways, which is why suddenly God's son was dead for 3 days. When on
Okay.
December 25th, or the birth of God's son, it rises another degree and starts to make its back over the way to the top. So whenever you hear horse, bow and arrow, spear, or horseman, you're talking about Sagittarius. And then finally you have Capricorn, because he's the goat, because he likes to climb the mountain. The mountain goats climb on a 1-inch ledge. Okay? If you're looking at the zodiac wheel on the right, Capricorn is the very bottom. So it starts to climb up the mountain on the way up to Cancer, which is its height. So those are the 12 signs. Do you have any questions before I go into this a little
No,
bit?
no, no. Keep going. This is, I mean, I've heard of the zodiac, but I've never seen this interpretation. This is fascinating. Keep going.
Okay. There's names for Jesus in church. All of Jesus's nicknames are astrological in nature. And I'm going to show you that right now.
Okay.
Remember, Jesus is the sun. Okay?
Hmm.
When the sun is in Capricorn, the goat, his name is the scapegoat of Israel. When the sun is in Aquarius, the man, he's called the son of man. When the sun is in Pisces, the two fish, he's called the fisherman of men. And it's also why he feeds the masses with 2 fish. When the sun is in Aries, the ram, the lamb, he's called the Lamb of God, or the Good Shepherd. Cancer, the crab. St. Augustine called Jesus the good beetle. When the sun is in Leo, he's the Lion of Judah. The lady holding the stalk of wheat, Virgo, he's born of a virgin, and he's called the bread of life. Libra, the scales of justice, he's known as the just one. These are all names that they give Jesus, and it's
Hmm.
all astrological. Then he's
Right.
betrayed in Scorpio. He dies in Sagittarius on December 21st, and it's also why he's worshipped on the sun day.
They.
Okay?
Wow.
Now I want you to look at this picture of Jesus on the left. This is a stereotypical picture that I just pulled off the internet. I'm going to
Hmm.
draw your attention to a couple things. The sun behind his head, the 2 fingers up like this, the heart outside the body with the crown of thorns,
Hmm.
the red and the white cloak, and his face, that stereotypical face. The sun is always behind Jesus because he represents the sun. Okay? Every picture you'll find of Jesus, the sun is behind him or is relating to the sun. The two fingers up are an ancient Kemetic peace sign. This is an ancient Egyptian peace sign. This right here that I'm doing, this is a V for victory. This is Winston Churchill, the British. This is a war sign. This is a war sign. This is the peace sign. So when you see Baphomet or you see Buddha or you see Jesus or any of these entities doing this, they're telling you they're peaceful. Now, the white Jesus, his face, is actually a guy named Caesar Borgia, who was the bastard son of Pope Alexander VI. Okay? See, in the 1500s, Rodrigo Borgia of the Borgia Illuminati family bought his way to the papacy.
Yes.
Okay? And what basically happened was there was no face of Jesus before then. Okay? The printing press came out 80 years prior, so suddenly they were able to mass produce this picture. Okay, now the crown of thorns wrapped around the heart on the outside, and the heart is always on the outside of the body when you depict Jesus, represents the rays of the sun. The heart outside the body represents the toroidal field or the human torus field. Okay, now the red and the white, remember how I told you the Bible is also alchemical?
Yes.
The reason it's red and white, okay, it's called the marriage of the red king and the white queen, or in alchemy terms, it's when you mix sulfur and mercury.
All right.
Okay. That would be alchemy. These are just a couple.
Let me tell you something. I'm like this. But Jesus's face was modeled by a Borgia. It's like, whoa, you know, because, you know, it's true. You're absolutely true. This is the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and this is very prototypically that kind of like version. But you never think, who did they model this on? Right. Wow.
Yeah. And Caesar Borgia really was a bastard. Not, I mean, like in real life.
Oh no! Yeah, I know, I know. That's why I'm saying it's very like wow.
Yeah, he killed his brother. He slept with his sister, or just two things that he did. Now, these are some pictures that I just pulled. The sun is always related. Now, in the second picture, sometimes they put a Knights Templar cross in the sun. But you'll always see the two fingers up, the heart outside the body. You'll always see the same thing, even in baby Jesus. Look at these baby Jesus pictures. The sun is always behind his head. You'll see the North Star Polaris in every picture too, okay? And this is the human toroidal field. It's an electromagnetic field of the heart. It extends outside. Basically, it's like an apple. You're the core of the apple, and it extends around you 6 feet, okay? That's why all the elites randomly came up with the idea to keep everyone 6 feet apart. It's so you couldn't interact electromagnetically.
Wow. Whoa. Interesting, because I know, you know, I've always heard of, you know, boundaries. You know how people like, hey, don't get too, you know, especially if somebody's a stranger. You always hear body boundaries, but that 6 feet thing, it's not that much. In other words, your boundaries.
Right, exactly. It's 6 feet. See, what happens is when someone comes up behind you, okay, you know that they're there. You're not a psychic. Okay, they broke your toroidal field. You can feel that. Okay, this is what it looks like when you interact with another one. It forms a vesica Pisces. Okay, that's what it looks like. This is Caesar Borgia on the right. This is another picture of Jesus. This is where he gets his face from.
Wow.
Okay.
That's a mind bender, I'm telling you. It really is, because that face of Jesus is everywhere for every, you know. It's so well used, and God, if most people knew what it was, who it was modeled on, it'd be like
absolutely.
You know, I'd rather have been some anonymous person rather than this guy.
Right, exactly. But you know that everything evil gets hidden into good. Now, before the Shroud of Turin...
Wait. Are you telling me that was on purpose? Or was it because he was a Borgia? Okay, well, that's why I'm asking.
It was both, yeah.
Okay.
Okay? Now, before the Shroud of Turin was discovered in 525 AD, almost all paintings and drawings of Jesus showed a young, beardless man. Okay? So now we're going to start decoding things with the keywords that I gave you. Okay?
Okay.
I'm gonna involve you in this, okay?
Sure.
So if I were to, you've heard of the phrase "pride comes before the fall"?
Of course.
Can you explain that to your listeners?
Well, do you think of pride, somebody that's so full of pride that they set themselves up to take a fall? Like, in other words, don't be overly conceited or prideful, because it's going to lead you, you're going to fall, you know?
Correct. But astrotheologically, let me ask you a question. What do you call a group of lions?
A pride.
Exactly. A group of lions is called a pride. Pride is the lion. The lion is Leo. Leo is in July and August. That comes before the fall. So it's a double entendre.
So you're saying that that's really the interpretation of that phrase? Pride cometh before the fall. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to read you. I'm going to jump around from book to book.
Go ahead.
So I can show you that it's not just in one book, or not just a
Okay.
Okay. In the book of Micah 5:2, my namesake. But you,
Okay.
Bethlehem Ephratah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come from me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from old, from ancient times. However, in Hebrew, Bethlehem is a combination of two words. It's not a location. Bet means house, and lechem means bread. So the house of bread. Well, I told you each zodiac sign is called a house, and which one would the house of bread be? Well, that's Virgo with the wheat stalk. That's the house of bread.
Okay.
So what they're really saying is the Savior will come from a virgin. Okay, if you understand
Okay.
how to read this. Now,
Okay.
the next one I'm going to read you is Deuteronomy 32. Okay, and I'm going to show you just how many signs start to come out. Okay?
Okay.
He gave them honey from the cliffs and olive oil from the rocky grounds. He gave his people butter from the herd and milk from the flock. He gave them lambs and goats. They had the best rams from Bashan and the finest wheat. They drank the best wine made from the juice of red grapes. But Jeshurun became fat and kicked like a bull. So let's go through this. He gave them honey
Okay.
from the cliffs. In the sign Cancer, there's a group of stars called the Beehive Cluster.
Okay.
Okay, it's called an asterism. It's a closely knit group of stars. It's like the Pleiades. Okay, now honey comes from the bees. That makes sense. Okay,
Yes.
olive oil, we know that's Libra. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
milk from the flock. Milk comes from the Milky Way galaxy, and the Milky Way galaxy has been called the Milky Way galaxy as far back as the Egyptian Book of the Dead that I found. Okay, now
What?
here's the
Okay,
thing.
because I'm trying to think, how were they able to, I know this, I mean, I know there's certain things that maybe you could see, but something like being able to see the galaxy, I didn't know that they could be able to do that.
Of course they can. They didn't have light pollution. They didn't have industrial pollution. They didn't have any of that kind of stuff. They didn't have lights. They could look up in the sky and see the whole world. This
Wow.
they could see everything. So the
All right,
Milky
keep
Way
going.
galaxy centers in
Mm-hmm.
Sagittarius. Okay.
Okay.
So the Beehive cluster is in Cancer. So your land from Cancer to Sagittarius is your land of milk and honey. It's not a place on Earth. It's a metaphor for a celestial being. Okay.
Okay.
Now he gave them lambs, that's Aries, and goats, that's Capricorn. They had the best rams, that's Aries, from Bashan, and the finest wheat. Wheat is Virgo, the lady with the wheat stalk. They drank the best wine made from the juice of red grapes. Wine is Libra. That's when you press the grapes. But Jeshurun became fat and kicked like a bull, and we know that the bull is Taurus. Okay, so there's 10 signs in this one passage. Now I'm going to show you how to use the zodiac.
But
Physically
why
use
would
the
they, let me ask you that, why
yeah.
would they need to write that? Let's say that right there. Why would they need to, was it the custom of the day, or was there a reason why they wrote it in that kind of like, that unless you knew what you were looking at, you really didn't understand it? Is there a reason why they
Well,
did
they
that?
put everything in metaphors. I'm going to get to that.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
I'm going to get to that, I promise.
Okay.
So the Mount of Olives. Now, Jesus led his disciples to the Mount of Olives after his last Passover so he could teach them a few more things, pray, then wait for Judas to betray him. While walking to the Mount of Olive, he gave the parable of the true vine. So let's follow that story. Passover takes place in Aries, so look at your zodiac wheel that's on the left. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Aries is on the left. Well,
Yep.
right after that, he walks to the Mount of Olives. Well, I told you olives are Libra. So how do you
Right.
go from Aries to Libra? You go across the zodiac. They're known as
Right.
opposing signs or cross signs.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're in Libra. They're waiting for Judas to betray him. Who's the betrayer? That's Scorpio. That's the scorpion. Okay? So you go
Okay.
from Aries to Libra, then you're waiting for the next sign over. These are forming patterns. They're always going to be opposing signs or connecting signs. It's not, you're not randomly going to be talking about twins and a goat. It doesn't work like that. There's always going to be causing patterns. Okay?
Okay.
So you go from Aries to Libra, and then the next sign is Scorpio, the betrayer. While in Libra, he gives the parable of the true vine. And the vine, we know, has to do with grapes. So that's Libra. So that's how we're going to be decoding things moving forward, okay?
Okay.
And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. I talk about this. The firmament is a dividing lines between the zodiac signs, as you can see here. Now, it's not a literal thing. These don't actually exist in the sky. But what they do represent is a 3-day period where one sign hands over the energy to another. The signs blend with each other. You've heard them as called cusps or
Cusps,
handover
yes.
dates.
Mhm.
Cusps, yes. That's what it represents, okay? The firmament is not a dome over a flat earth. That's not what it is. The firmament is the dividing lines between signs. Because when you're at a firmament, okay, let me show you here. Okay, we were just talking about this. Passover's in Aries, okay?
Right.
When you're in Aries, you can only talk about the lamb, the ram, the shepherd, or things of that nature, or Passover, for example.
Right.
But if you're at the firmament of Aries and Taurus, now you could talk about that, or you could talk about the bull. and the cow. Okay, does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yes.
Okay. So the firmament is dividing lines. So look at this. Divided the waters which are under the firmament, Pisces, from the waters which are above the firmament, Aquarius. And it was so. Okay, so this is how I'm just building a universe for you.
Mm-hmm.
Revelation 4:7. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. There's people that believe there's literally going to be a four-headed animal in the sky. However, the first living creature was like a lion. That's Leo. The second was like an ox. That's Taurus. The third had a face like a man. That's Aquarius, the man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. Now, when you get deep into astrology, you'll learn that in astrology, the Scorpio scorpion is the belly-crawling creature. It's the lowest form of life on Earth. Okay? Much like the snake in the Garden of Eden. What's the first thing happening to him after he helped betray? They took away his legs, so he had to crawl on his belly. In Santo de la Muerte in Mexico, okay, people dress up in suits, get on their belly, and crawl to church. Okay? It's a form of punishment. Yes. Now, the evolved form, also known as the ascendant of the scorpion, is the eagle, which is the highest flying form of life on Earth. So the eagle becomes Scorpio. So now you have Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio. Those are the four fixed signs of the zodiac. You have things called fixed signs, mutable signs, cardinal signs. The reason they're called fixed is because they're fixed in their season. Leo's in the middle, right in the middle of summer. Taurus, spring. Aquarius, winter. Eagle, or Scorpio, fall. Now let's read this one more time. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. Now the man and the lion are opposing signs. The ox and the scorpion are opposing signs. So when you read this and you look at the zodiac, it makes this pattern. Okay?
Right.
Four fixed signs. So that's what they're actually talking about. It's not actually going to be a four-headed thing in the sky. These are all celestial metaphors.
Okay.
Ezekiel 10:14. Each of the cherubim had four faces. One face was that of a cherub. The second, the face of a human being. The third, the face of a lion. The fourth, of a flying eagle. Revelation 12. A great sign appeared in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon, with 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns on its head. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. Again, people thinking there's going to be a giant pregnant woman and a dragon in the sky, but there actually is.
Okay.
The woman clothed with the sun is the sun clothed in Virgo. It's just a metaphor. Okay. Now, if the sun's in Virgo, the moon will be at her feet. So there's 12 zodiac signs. There's a 24-hour-a-day clock, so the sun spends 2 hours a day in each sign. When the sun is in Virgo, if you do the math, that's between 4 and 6 p.m. That's still daytime. So if the sun is out, the moon will be at her feet, right? It's just a metaphor.
Okay. All right. Okay?
Now, another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous dragon. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. Look at Draco on the left. This is the tail. The constellation Draco is the dragon. Its tail goes from Aries to Sagittarius, which is 4/12 of the signs, or 1/3 of the stars out of the sky. Okay, so these are all just celestial revelations.
Okay.
Revelation 7:4. Then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. So there's people who think that only 144,000 people, the Jehovah's Witnesses especially, are going to go to heaven. But that's not the case, okay? Because this has influence. The Bible has influences from the East. They're talking about the chakras here. There are 7 chakras. The root has 4 petals. The sacral has 6. The solar plexus has 10. The heart has 12 and the throat has 16, which equals 48. The third eye chakra is represented by 96 and only has 2 petals because it's 2 times as powerful as the lower chakras. So 48 times 2 gets you 96. The crown chakra is 1,000 times more powerful than the lower 6 chakras. When you add the lower 6, you get 96 plus 48 equals 144. You multiply that by the pineal gland chakra, and you get your 144,000. When you've activated all your chakras, that's when you get to see God.
Wow.
Matthew 10:16. You've heard this. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Well, the sheep is Aries, and the wolf is the constellation Lupus, who borders the Libra line. Look at the pattern it makes in the zodiac. Yes. Again, opposing signs or connecting signs. That's all that's ever made. Okay, these are done this way on purpose.
Let me ask you: were they using these astrological signs as in for the timing, or just because this was how they wanted? They were trying to write in such a way that they were using these signs as a I guess, as a hidden way.
They wrote this. They wrote this to hide the wisdom. That's what they did.
Okay,
They
okay,
wrote, they
all
wrote
right.
parables and they wrote scripture to hide the wisdom.
Okay, okay.
The Bible is an encoded farmer's almanac. Okay, I've gone over the 12 signs. I told you when you harvest, when you reap, when you plant, when winter's coming, when spring's coming. You know what happens the summer solstice, the winter solstice. It's a farmer's almanac. So I've
Let me
given
ask you something, Micah. If something, and to me, you tell me like a farmer's almanac, I want to say that's the most innocuous thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? As far as why would you want to hide information like an almanac? You understand? Because most people think of hidden or, things hidden in plain view, or because it's either dangerous information or goes against
Well, they're
the...
basically mapping out the heavens. They're basically mapping out the heavens. They're telling you where each star is. If you know how to read this,
Okay.
cipher, they're telling you where everything is. I'm going to tell you a quote real quick from John Dominic Crossan. Okay? He says, my point is, once again, is not that the ancients told literal stories, and we are now smart enough to take them symbolically, but that they told them symbolically, and we are now dumb enough to take them literally.
That's interesting. Because you know what? When you're describing what you're describing, when you are telling it, then you go, oh, I get it. And I'm thinking to myself, because at that time, let's, maybe when only very small amount of people were literate, okay, which would be the only ones that would have access to it. Did they do that on purpose?
What you got to understand is it wasn't always that way. I've traced this code back to the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Quran. It's all written the same way. All the ancient holy books are all written the same way. Because the heavens are God. The heavens are
right, exactly. Well, right, and it's there. It's like, and I understand what you're saying. It's not like, oh, have this special book which I have put away in this shelf and it's locked away. If you know what you're looking for in the heavens, it's there. It doesn't. No, because I'm getting to the part where it's like, man, did somebody along the lines decide we're going to make this knowledge not forbidden? That's the wrong word, but we're going to disguise it.
Yes, I'll read this to you real quick. What is the point of this? This is what I was getting at. What is the point of this? I'll jump ahead. We take for granted we have calendars, clocks, watches, weathermen. The ancients didn't have any of that. They had sundials. In the Bible, they worked on dream interpretations for harvest. They had to know things. They needed to know Taurus is when you put the plow on the bull and plant, as above, so below. The Bible is an encoded farmer's almanac and was the knowledge of staying alive, which was the most important thing. Yes. They would look at the stars and see all the movement and make stories up about them, then pass them down to their children, then them to their children. Eventually, they learned how to write and wrote them down, and they evolved from Sumerian to Babylonian to Egyptian to Judaism to Greek. It kind of passed back and forth, then to the Christians, then to the Quran, and now to the new religion. That's the point of this.
So you're saying that, let's say for the sake of the Bible, at least the Old Testament, what you're saying is the Hebrews took all this information that these prior civilizations had, and they wrote it, their version of it is what you're saying?
That's right. That's right.
Into the Old Testament? Okay.
That's right. If you go to my YouTube channel, Micah Dank, I have all my work on there.
Okay.
It's everything that I've done so far. It's all the ancients. This code is in everything.
Okay.
And it makes patterns in the sky. So let me.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the Book of Job?
No, I mean I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it.
You're not. So Job was.
Well, Job, I know what the Job, the tribute, but yeah, go ahead.
Job was a wise man, okay, and he was very, very humble and loving to God, okay. And Satan came up to God and said, "The only reason he's loving to you is because he has a wife, children, animals, house, money. You know, if he took that away, he won't be humble, or he won't praise you." And God says, "I'll take that bet, and I give you permission to do whatever you want to him, but you may not take his life." So Satan says, okay, so little by little stuff starts disappearing and running away and getting sick and dying. At one point, he's sitting there and he's crying up to God. And God actually answers him. This is one of the times that God literally speaks in the Bible. And I'm going to read you the answer. And the first sentence that I read you is what God says. And the second is the interpretation, okay?
Okay.
Job 38:32. God's first says, can you lead forth the Mazzaroth? Well, the Mazzaroth is literally the zodiac. His first question is, do you know your zodiac? Mazzaroth over time becomes Mazalot, which survives in Judaism today as Mazel Tov. which means good fortune from the stars. So the Lord's challenge to Job, he says, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? Those are obvious celestial metaphors.
Mm-hmm.
Then he says, can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons, or lead out the bear with its cubs? The constellations are the zodiac above, and the bear and its cubs are Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and Ursa Minor, part of the Big Dipper. Then he says, who can tip over the water jars of heavens? Well, that's literally the man tipping it over in Aquarius. Do you hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy the hunger of the lions? That's Leo. Who provides food for the raven? That's the constellation Corvus, which means raven and borders on Virgo. Do you watch where the doe bears her fawn? Mariga, meaning deer, is located in Orion. Who let the wild donkey go free? That's a Celis borealis, meaning donkey, and is located in Cancer. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? That's Taurus. The wings of the ostrich flap joyfully. That's Lambda Aquile, or Al-Thaliman, which means two ostriches in Arabic. Do you give the horse its strength? It laughs at fear, afraid of nothing. It does not shy away from the sword. So you have the horse. The quiver rattles against its side. Well, what's the quiver for? The quiver is for the arrows. So you have the horse with a bow and the arrow. That's Sagittarius.
Okay.
Does the eagle soar at your command and build its nest on high? That's Aquila, which is the Latin name for eagle and is a constellation a few degrees above the celestial equator. Finally, he says, can you pull in Leviathan with a fish hook? And we know that at the early ages of Christianity, they were competing fish gods. You had Dagonism, you had Mithraism, you had Leviathan. Leviathan was a fish god. Fish is Pisces. So you see how God literally just tests him on the signs, on the stars. That's all he does. Okay, when you understand how to read this, that's all he does. That's all this whole the whole Bible is. Okay. I mean, if I go to the book of Psalms, he sends forth springs in their valleys. The wild donkeys quench their thirst. He causes the grass to grow for the cattle, and wine which makes man's heart glad, so that he may make his face glisten with oil. The high mountains are for the wild goats. He made the moon for the seasons. The sun knows the place of its setting. The young lions roar after their prey. The springs are Aquarius. The wild donkeys are Celis borealis, which are in Cancer. The cattle is Taurus, the bull. The wine is Libra. The oil is Libra. The wild goats are Capricorn. The moon for its seasons, the sun knows its place of its setting, is openly talking about the sun and the moon. The lions roar after their prey are Leo. So I have another one from Psalms, but it's the same thing. So answers to the questions at the beginning, right? How Jesus was able to heal the blind. Remember, Jesus is the Piscean age solar deity. Okay. He's an astrotheological, allegorical metaphor for the sun, just like Horus was, just like Amen-Ra was.
Right.
Okay? Jesus was able to heal the blind. Well, I don't know if you can see around here right now, but it's dark. Mm-hmm. If you're looking where I am, it's dark. I have a light on. Okay. Without it, I'm blind. I can't see. But when the sun comes up in the morning, suddenly you have sight. Now in the story, Jesus touches the blind man's eyes. He licks his fingers and touches the blind man's eyes, and suddenly he can see. But the sun does the same thing too. How the sun walks on water. You ever see the sun on a sunset before on a lake?
Right.
The sun literally walks across the water. Okay? Jesus' name is Jesus Christ. Okay? Christ in Greek is Christos. Christos means oil or anointed one. Well, doesn't oil also walk on water? Have you ever poured oil on water before?
Yeah, you're right.
It's a double entendre.
Yes.
Okay? How we turned water into a wine. This isn't a parlor trick. This is an agricultural process. Mm-hmm. So the reason God is considered a man and earth is considered a woman has to do with one thing. Okay? It has to do with God's sacred rain, the fluid. Okay? In Hebrew, the word is shemen. We get the word semen from it. God's sacred fluid pours onto Mother Earth. Okay? And from her belly, fruits and vegetation grow. Okay? So that's why she's a woman. Now, you have Taurus, that's when you plant. And in Taurus, you have April showers bring May flowers. Everyone knows that. So God's rain pours and pours and pours. You plant the grapes, and then it pours and it pours, and then you harvest in Libra. You know, it pours all the way through. So that's how you turn water into wine. Okay. So
let me ask you, in all of this, because I had heard this, that same thing where you had, prior to, Christianity, where you had the same thing where you had a type of figure that was born of a virgin, and, dies and comes back to life 3 days after.
It's all the same story. It's all the same story. 12 disciples, dead for 3 days. Born on December 25th. I'm telling you this ancient story. They call it the greatest story ever told. this is the only story ever told. Okay?
Okay.
Because it has to do with the sun, because without the sun, nothing exists.
Exactly.
Okay? So
Exactly.
that's why it's that. Why he had 12 disciples? Each one of the zodiac signs represents one of the disciples. I already told you that Judas is Scorpio, the betrayer.
Okay.
Well, how about John the Baptist? Wouldn't he be Aquarius, the man with the water pitcher?
Yes, that's right.
So they all have roles. I'm not going to go into all that. But why he was betrayed with a kiss by Judas, we did that. Why he was dead for 3 days, we did that. Why is his birthday on December 25th? We did that. I told you, it's all astrology.
So basically, it's just taking, and we're going to use Christianity in this case. It's basically taking a story, you know, that was used by prior civilizations, you know, but inserting their deities, in other words.
Right.
But the story told is the same thing.
Right. I have a second half of this presentation that I'd love to do with you because I'm coming up on the end of the first half.
Yes.
If you're interested.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Because I'm not going to be able to do it now because I'm going to have to hop off and get on another podcast.
Okay. All right. Well, we can reschedule this for the second part. Absolutely. This to me, I'm taking this in. I'm like, my brain's going, shh. You just don't notice the smoke coming out of my ears because, you hear little bits and pieces of what you're but then you're not really sure how much of this is real, and then of course, like you said, you never see the Bible. I mean, in other words, you hear, yes, the Bible's been edited and people are, different, whatever things have been added or taken off, that kind you always hear that. All right. But not from the perspective of what you're describing.
Right.
That makes it so interesting because then it makes you realize there's something here. Now
remember this, Marlene. I told you the Bible was 7 sciences. I'm only giving you 1.
Oh,
okay, the Bible it's more than you could learn in a lifetime.
Okay.
Okay, I've been studying astrology and astrotheology for 10 years. I teach it.
Let me ask you, what do you think that, and I know that there's different versions of the Bible, are there any works that are omitted or taken out that are part of the story?
It doesn't matter. I've done the Gnostic texts. I'm doing the Hammadi.
Yes.
All the Gnostic texts and all that. The Book of Enoch, the Book of Thomas, the Book of Judas, the Book of Mary Magdalene, Philip, all that. I've done all that. They all have the same code.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Everything.
Okay. Exactly, and that's where I'm going. Is like, because you always hear it was edited, along the way, things were left out or taken out purposely, and things were, as far as the Gospels and things like this, we'll leave that in, and it's like, okay, I wonder what happened when he went in there, and did he come across stuff that is like, well, this is part of it, whether it's part of the official Bible, and I know that there's, different interpretations. But basically, you're telling me that this roadmap that you have as far as interpreting the works, it's applicable across the board to all these different.
Yes, I've done it to the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Really?
The Enuma Elish, the Quran, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I've done it to the Code of Hammurabi. It's all the same.
I have one question for you. At the very beginning, when you showed those cave paintings, when you look at them, you're thinking what they were depicting is what they were hunting. In other words,
food. Correct.
Right. They're hunting. This is what
that's above, so below, Marlene. You've heard that,
right? How did these?
Above, so below.
How did they? And how did they? Or was it somebody that said, "Let's put this up on this is basically what they're depicting are stars, astrological signs versus what they're hunting." Well, that right there is a big jump.
This is where I get into the supernatural a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
At some point, this ancient science that repeats. I mean, I've shown you dozens of codes so far.
Right.
Okay. This could be done in any book. All right. Any ancient holy book. Okay. At some point, the science was taught to us.
Okay. Because I'm trying to think, okay, where's the jumping off point for this?
Well, think about it like this. The sun tells the hour of the day. The moon tells the day of the month. The zodiac tells the month of the year. Where we're located in the middle of the Milky Way galaxy, in the middle of nowhere. There's a perfect solar count. There's a sky clock.
Right.
That they figured out thousands of years, and then they wrote it in an encasing books. There's something called chronological ethnocentrism, where basically we think that people in the past are dumber than we are now. That's basically the dumbed
Yes.
down version of it. And
Yes.
it's literally not the case. It's like
Okay.
John Dominic Cressant said, we're now, dumb enough to take it literally.
So do you think that all these things like Stonehenge, when I say pyramids, I'm not only
Stonehenge is an astrological site.
they're all the part of that same.
Right. Göbekli Tepe, the same
Yes.
thing.
Okay.
The Antikythera mechanism that they found in the water, that was an ancient computer that used to track the stars. It's all. This is the code. This is the secret behind it.
And all these pyramids. Now I'm not talking only Egyptian. I'm talking, that they found, like, whether it's
Yeah,
central or south.
they all line up to Orion's belt. Yeah.
Oh, they're all along the same lines as far as the study.
As far as how they line up to Orion's belt, yeah.
Wow. It makes you wonder, how did we all get on the same page? Even though supposedly,
right,
some of these cultures or civilizations, there wasn't any crossover as far as that we know.
Right.
As far as how they shared knowledge.
Right. So just letting your listeners
Yes.
know that if they wanted to connect with me, I'm on
Absolutely.
Twitter.
You got to. I mean, do you ever go into Atlantis? I have to ask.
To the extent that Edgar Casey talks about it.
Yes. Okay.
What was I going to say? Twitter, Real Mr. Dank, spell out Mr. Facebook and Instagram, Micah Dank. YouTube, Micah Dank. All my work is there. You can catch up on all this stuff.
Let me tell you something. But don't. So as far as Atlantis, we're talking here along the Casey readings, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
That is, oh boy. Thank you. It has been wonderful.
They show you in movies
Yes.
and TV. Superman, the Cave of Crystals. They show it to you.
Wait, stop. Oh, what do you mean Superman? Okay. See, you throw out these curveballs and it's like, wait a minute. Superman is a comic book.
No, the movie.
Yeah, I know, but based on okay, I know. No, I know, but it's like, so basically the person that made the movie was throwing in these symbolism into the movie. Is that what you're saying?
The elites, the really high up people know this science. They know this stuff.
Is this part of the reason why some of it is obscure or veiled or
Yep.
Okay.
The best thing that they can have is people arguing about it without the truth coming out. And you know what? Astrotheology has the benefit of making a lot of sense too.
Okay.
Whereas when you read religious texts, you have to use things like apologetics to explain how a donkey talks or this happens,
Right. And it's like, and exactly like what you were saying, you can't read this as in a literal translation physically,
No,
that this
you
is what
physically
happens.
can't. You can't. This has 7 different layers to it, and I'm just teaching one. And I didn't even go into the book of Matthew, which I'm going to do with you next time.
Yes. And obviously this is still going on in modern times if we're talking here.
Right.
The movies, which is something basically 100 years.
Right.
Where, and I mean, how can I say this? You always hear, that sometimes they insert symbology, like into movies, but not along the lines as far back when you start, when you pull the string, is how far back does this really go?
Right. So will you let me know what your
yes,
say?
You will get an email from me very soon, and we're going to go to part 2, and maybe part 3, and maybe part 4.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Wow. Yeah. Oh, boy. I'm telling you. Yeah. You know what? He's talking, and I'm looking at this, at his presentation, and I'm playing catch up. I'm like, okay, because I think I have the general knowledge of like what most people have of the zodiac and the 12 signs, and I understand about, ascendants, and that they're based on these stars in the heavens, and they wrote, this is like very generalized information that most people have. And when he's throwing those things out, I'm like, huh? What? What do you mean? And it's like, I guess what I'm trying to say is you never think of astrology or, stuff that everybody knows about astrology, or whether you want to call it New Age astrology. You never connect that as in an interpretation or the filter that you're going to put on texts like the Bible or things of, pre-Christian Judeo writings from other civilizations. Uh, Stuff like that is really like, I'm telling you, I'm like going, and again, and I know that's part of me, which is I wish I could have gotten into it. To me, it's like, okay, if and I understand that part where maybe whether when we were going from we became hunter gatherers to more agricultural, and even when you were hunter gatherers, the people had to be aware of seasons, okay? Because even if you weren't planting and you were following uh, herds, or if you knew, okay, we're going to move from this area to this other area because the weather becomes, in other words, you had to be aware, like he said, survival was an everyday thing. So knowing this information, being aware of it, like the timing, okay, this is, okay, now is the time that we're going to leave and go to this other place because we know that the winter will start coming in. I'm talking here, migratory or nomadic type of people. And then, of course, when you started talking about when, civilization started to, plant things and, became a little bit more stable. And of course, this allowed cities and all this and all that. I absolutely can see how that works. And I mean, I'm a modern person, and even now, um, and I live in Florida, which is not really a season heavy state. And it's something that you watch for. And by no means does my survival depend on it, is my point. And I still watch out for it. I still watch out for it because it affects me. Rainfall, lack of rainfall, cold weather, hot weather. So can you imagine if your survival depended on it? Okay, in other words, you didn't have the benefit of what we have now, air conditioning or heating to control your weather, your temperature. Whether you had to uh, move your flock or harvest things. And I can see where this was seen as really important. Okay, whether you put enough food away for the winter, what you harvested. A lot of people, we don't think about that because let's face it, we can go to the nearest. Well, we don't even have to go anywhere at this point. We can get stuff delivered from the nearest because just about now, all the food chains will do deliveries of food stuff for you. All right. So in other words, that need to that imperative need that we people had back in those times of the timing of stuff, how important it was, or that it could spell death for you or your family 2 or 3 or 4 months down the line. That is not far-fetched when you start looking at it through the prism of what he's describing. All right. My thing was that it was like, wow. And again, I'm hoping when he comes back, he can explain like why why this, all the symbolism, why because I'm thinking, like I said, eventually at some point where once we get into written language, all right, you always think of the common people not really being literate, okay? And maybe you had, of course, royal families or scribes and maybe priests. I'm talking about pre, who, and maybe they were literate. Uh, why why make it so convoluted? I mean, I can understand, how's this? I can understand how, let's say the times where if you were, like what happened with Galileo, he was, or Nostradamus, or any of these people that were talking about stuff that the church was going to come and knock on your door going, what are you talking about? Where you were like, you wrote things very symbolically because you wanted to keep your head on your shoulders. That I can understand. Okay. Or, when you see some of these paintings of these masters where they would put all these symbolic items in paintings that unless you knew what you were looking at or what they meant, you would just say, oh, it's just part of but it's not. Because remember, at one point, from what I understand, let's say during the time of the Renaissance, and even, well, even let's say in the time of the Renaissance, you weren't as an artist really allowed to, um, how can I say it, create, whether you were a sculptor or painting, anything that was secular. Everything had to be tied into religion. All right, a religious figure in the Bible. Of course, we have all the different paintings of Jesus, Mary, or the Holy Family, or the apostles, or even David. David was, David and Goliath. David was part of the Bible. In other words, but you could not go really off. And then we got into the part where you were depicting, let's say the Mona Lisa, which God knows there's a gazillion million versions of who the Mona Lisa is, why the Mona Lisa. But I'm saying, or you were painting your patron. All right, somebody came and paid you to, hey, I want you to, because of course there's no photography, I want you to paint my wife or myself or my children. And later on it got, but you really couldn't go off too much out of that lane, because before you knew it, you could be, exiled or killed or branded a heretic. Bottom line, I could see where maybe things were cloaked, but all these things far back, which predate any of that, why would it? And then you know what? I think I understand what he means, layer upon layer upon layer, because to a lot of people, let's say in the Bible, it's like there was a time before the Bible was ever written. All right, before the Hebrews, whatever, wrote the Old Testament, which he talks about other different civilizations which had their own versions of whatever, whether it's their religious beliefs or their stories of creation, whatever. And this is what we talked about, that some of these things dovetail in similarity, and maybe not exactly very, very similar, that you're like, okay, so how does this all end up being so closely related, one thing to the other? And it's a real, you know what? And of course, when we hear it, it's news to it's new to us. When I say us, I mean as in modern or more recent. And depends also what you want to call modern. Are we talking 500 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years? All right. And of course, I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that, hear that, astrology, some religious, especially Christian sects, are anti-astrology, things of that nature. And I really don't understand that too well. Why? Because anything that you could ever hear about, that people read in the newspapers, oh, what is, whatever your sun sign is, what does it say for today? To me, it was harmless. Absolutely harmless. And I know there's people that have done their birth charts and with the degrees and the houses, and how much that influences what your basically your birth chart, and it kind of details physically how you're going to look, and maybe your personality, and maybe even your life path. But even then, I still don't see how it could be contradictory to any type of belief system. But I'm telling you right now, I'm almost in the back of my mind, I'm like, wow. And of course, somebody that studied all this stuff for so long, this really makes your head like, wow. How much else is there? And you know what? I'm going to throw this one out, and I know there's people going to, okay, I'm sure that back in 2007, was it? Was it 2007? When The Secret came out, all right? And everybody, if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you've heard of it, which is The Secret. I can't remember the lady's name right now. She's Australian, but, and when you read it, or not when you read it, when you see it, even though there's a book version of it, she kind of like alludes kind of in a way to what he was saying about that there's a secret which elites or people in the know, or whether they're the priest class or the people up the food chain, whether they were royal or the top of the heap, whatever you want to call it, however the organization works, they're the ones that had all this knowledge of how things really work. And basically a lot of us regular people, we're all these all this knowledge is kept from us because if we had it, or we understood more or less how things worked, how's that, then we wouldn't. I don't want to say we would be at the bottom, but it's almost like there's more to what we're saying that life is, or the way things work, or the universe works, or manifestation works, versus than what we're led to believe. And we're easily distracted by a lot of things, which, by the way, I do agree on a lot of the precepts. And she, and that movie, they had a bunch of people come on, like self-help gurus, and a lot of people, interesting people saying stuff. And I know that a lot of it took off. That movie took off, and then it got criticized really heavily because they were like, "Oh, this person's oversimplifying. You're going to sit there and you're going to think your way out of a problem, or you're going to think like, oh, I need a new car, and I'm going to concentrate, and poof, the car's out." And by the way, that's not really what it says. That's not really what it said. But then that's a whole nother story about as far as. But there's a part of it in the sense of what he's saying, that when I asked him, well, why is this so hidden? Why can't you just say this is the, which is what I want to ask him about again when he comes back, is like, at what point did this become, okay, why do I have to, because I know Virgo, for example, is a virgin, but why can't, when they say the olive oil, why can't they just say, well, the Libra, or the scales, or the justice? Why can't they just say that instead of phrasing it as when the time of the olive oil? I know there's got to be an answer for that. I know there's got to be an explanation for that. And that's what I want to find out. So, hey guys, let me go. Let me go cool off my brain or something. Please go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com. You're going to find all my information there. Everything that's going on. I'm going to have a link to Micah's main website, which he has links to everything else on there. And by the way, we didn't even get into that. He has a 7-book series. All right, a 7-book series in how can I say it? It's the series is called Into the Rabbit Hole, and it's a fictional character. All right, but what the world, or that he creates for it, is based on his research. All right, and it's along the lines, kind of like Dan Brown's, his series of, how can I say it, hidden stuff or symbolism, but it's just great. It's great because you read it. I started reading, the free, that you can sample something over on Amazon. I started reading it. It's like 7 books, and I was like, wow, it really takes off. That's another thing that you should check out, is if you go to Amazon, of course, look up Micah Dank, D-A-N-K, and you can look at his series on there. And and he told me before we started recording that he's got an 8th book. He's got an 8th book in the mix going on right now, along the same series, by the way. So there you go. So I've got a lot of interesting guests. I've got to formulate a second visit with Danka. In other words, this is like because I'm thinking I could see where I could talk to him for like about 3 or 4 more shows, to be honest with you. It's like, where do you go with this? All right, guys, it has been great. I will keep you updated on, like I said, the Halloween special. And please come back every week. I really enjoy this time that we spend together, and I believe you are all wonderful. Take care.